The person who just pulled up in that gleaming luxury car might have exactly $47 sitting in checking. The coworker flaunting a five-figure handbag may own less in savings than the price tag on her wrist. The guy at the bar, bragging about his portfolio, is probably drowning in more credit card interest than he'll ever see in capital gains. And that influencer flexing first-class flights is likely 3 months behind on rent. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. So stay with me because by the end of this, you'll be able to spot it in literally anyone. Nearly half of all cardholders carry a revolving balance every single month, and yet luxury car lots stay packed, and premium brands keep posting record revenue, which means the gap between what people actually have and what they're willing to project has never been this wide. We've entered an era of manufactured prosperity, a collective mountain of $1.28 trillion in credit card debt with the average household, sitting on 6 figures of total obligation. And still, the parking lots gleam, the shopping bags multiply, and the feeds fill with people showing off money they don't legally possess, because an entire generation has mastered the performance of wealth while building zero foundation underneath it. And once you learn to read the signals, you'll start seeing this everywhere. And better yet, you'll make sure you never fall into it yourself, because these aren't just embarrassing habits. They quietly eat away at your real shot at financial freedom. So here are the 10 unmistakable signs someone is only playing rich. Sign 1 is the entry-level badge trap, buying the cheapest possible version of a prestige name, the stripped sedan, the oversized logo belt, the smallest starter bag, chasing the emblem with none of the budget to support it, and you can spot it in any parking lot. The European compact with no heated seats and no navigation, the coupe with the weakest engine option and not a single upgrade, built that way on purpose because brands know people want the badge more than the machine. Meanwhile, a fully loaded mainstream car costs the same as that stripped-down luxury model and beats it on tech, comfort, reliability, and upkeep. But the status chaser can't drive something ordinary. They need the world to clock the logo. And it doesn't stop at the purchase. Premium fuel, inflated insurance, brutal repair bills follow for years. And the math is unforgiving. Someone faking wealth funnels 20 to 30% of their income into status props, while someone actually wealthy spends 2 to 5% of net worth on the same categories. And that gap compounds over a career into hundreds of thousands ripped straight out of retirement. Real money buys the toy after the foundation is built. Fake money buys the toy first and hopes the foundation shows up later, and it almost never does. Sign 2 is talking about money constantly and compulsively, twisting every conversation back to income, trades, deals, always angled to make them look like the smartest person in the room. Mention pizza, and they'll one-up you with a story about the years before they made it. Mention a vacation, and they'll launch into airline point strategy funded entirely by debt. Mention a friend's win, and they'll flip it back to their own milestone in 2 sentences, because someone who's actually secure feels no pull to remind people what they're earning. And notice the tense. It's always future tense, the deal that's closing next month, the venture that's about to change everything, because the present numbers aren't impressive enough, and real money isn't real until it clears. Deals fall apart, investments crater, but the fake rich talk projected income like it's already banked because their current reality can't carry the weight of their ego. And watch for the revenue versus profit sleight of hand, bragging about $500,000 in business volume while quietly pocketing 50 grand. Which is fine on its own, but nowhere close to the flex being sold. And that gap between the story and the truth is the tell, because the genuinely wealthy stay private about numbers, not out of secrecy, but because they have nothing left to prove. Sign 3, and this one's brutal, owning a designer item worth more than your entire liquid savings, the $5,000 bag next to $2,000 in the bank, the luxury watch on a wrist attached to a maxed-out card. And that purchase was never a celebration of arrival. It's a costume for a success that hasn't happened yet. And here's the rule. If you can't buy it twice over in cash, you can't actually afford it. And if one purchase equals 2 or 3 months of your labor, that's not wealth. That's a countdown to collapse dressed up as confidence. Because that item doesn't signal intelligence or control. It signals a willingness to torch your future for 3 seconds of someone else's attention. And people genuinely finance handbags on installment plans, paying interest on a depreciating asset that's worth half its price the moment it leaves the store, ending up 30% poorer than the sticker ever said, while people with real money spend a rounding error of their net worth on luxury, never a slice of their monthly cash flow. Sign 4 is the chronic one-upper. Whatever you did, they did it bigger. Your promotion, their bigger jump. Your vacation, their business class trip to France. Your new watch, a lecture on movement quality you're supposedly too unrefined to hear. Picture a friend announcing their first home purchase, and before the room can even celebrate, the one-upper cuts in to say they should have held out for something bigger, draining the joy out instantly. And it plays out at work too. You land a client and mention it, and suddenly they're detailing the massive contract they closed, the commission, the dinner the CEO bought them, and your win evaporates into their need to win the room. This isn't conversation, it's competition, and it comes from insecurity, never confidence, because someone actually secure can celebrate your win without feeling threatened by it, while the fake rich feel your success chipping away at their story, so they attack your milestone to protect their own. Sign 5 is the curated highlight reel, the filtered feed of hauls, unboxings, and staged luxury built to project wealth whether or not it exists. Because someone financially secure doesn't need strangers validating it. But for the performer, the moment isn't real until it's liked. And here's the ugly incentive behind it. Flexing spending outperforms flexing discipline every time. A video titled, "Spend $1,000 with me at the mall," crushes a video titled, "Watch me put 1,000 into my index fund." So people learn that performing wealth pays in attention while building it, pays in silence. And nobody films the dishes, the budget spreadsheet, the quiet Saturday spent saving money. So the highlight reel becomes the only reality anyone sees. And watch for the fake engagement too. Huge follower counts with comment sections full of copy-paste bots. A fabricated audience propping up a fabricated identity. Stacked illusions on illusions. While actual multimillionaires often run quiet or non-existent social profiles because they need nothing from strangers. Sign 6 is the endless lease cycle on luxury cars, one of the most normalized financial traps out there. Leasing means paying for the steepest depreciation years of a car's life and then handing it back. The dealership prices the residual value after 3 years, and you cover the entire gap plus interest and fees. So a $50,000 car dropping to $30,000 means you just paid $20,000 for pure depreciation. And then you walk in and do it again. Lease, return, forever. 20 years of that, and you've burned hundreds of thousands with zero equity to show for it. But it stays popular because it squeezes an exotic car payment into a budget that could never buy the car outright. The neighbors see the badge, not the fact that there's no equity, sky-high insurance, and future income already spoken for. And if you actually want a nice car for reasons that aren't about being watched, buying reliable and used with cash is the only move that makes sense. It just doesn't come with new car smell. Sign 7 is wearing counterfeit luxury, which is quietly announcing to the room that you're pretending. Because anyone who owns the real thing can spot a fake from across a room. Crooked stitching, cheap leather, a slightly wrong logo, hardware that feels hollow. And the irony is that fakes aren't even cheap. A good counterfeit runs $200 or $300, which could instead buy a genuinely well-made bag from an honest, smaller brand, with real leather and real craftsmanship, just without the inflated name. But craftsmanship was never the point. The logo was. And if it were really about the design, why copy one specific billionaire brand instead of buying something original within reach? The brand choice gives away the motive every time, and a fake buys zero real status, while the people you're trying to impress can usually tell anyway. Sign 8 is nonstop chatter about the next get-rich-quick scheme. Not obvious scams, the more believable ones: leveraged forex, drop shipping, crypto day trading, options, MLM, infinite banking pitches, always spoken about in the future tense, because talking about the next big thing lets them avoid talking about what they've actually built. And here's how the cycle runs. They find a new vehicle, become obsessed, try to recruit everyone around them, project total confidence, and 6 months later, they've lost the money and quietly moved on to the next hot thing with the exact same energy, repeating every 12 to 24 months, because admitting the loss would collapse the whole image, and real wealth is built slowly and boringly over decades, which conflicts completely with a personality that needs constant drama to feel alive. When someone won't stop pitching the next big breakthrough, it's usually because the current one already failed quietly. Sign 9 is unsolicited, condescending financial advice. You mention you're happy in your modest apartment, and they tell you someone at your level should have upgraded by now. You drive a reliable paid-off car, and they ask why you haven't financed something newer. You mention saving aggressively, and they tell you your cash is rotting and should be thrown into whatever they're chasing this month. And it's never asked for, and it always conveniently points toward the exact choices they've made themselves, because your different path succeeding threatens the story they've built to justify their own decisions, so they need you to copy them to feel validated, when in reality everyone's timeline, risk tolerance, and goals are different, and someone genuinely secure in their own choices has no need to pressure you into making the same ones. And sign 10, the last one, is simply overdoing the whole presentation. Logos everywhere, loud jewelry, overpowering cologne, dressing like a movie character's idea of rich instead of an actual person who happens to own nice things. Go look at real self-made billionaires photographed on an ordinary day, not a gala, and you'll see the same plain t-shirt worn repeatedly, a modest car, the same house they bought decades ago, people you'd walk past without a second glance, because when you can genuinely afford anything, there's no pressure to prove it. But when you have nothing behind you, everything has to shout, and the louder the outfit, the louder the desperation underneath it. Real wealth is quiet specifically because it never has to try. And that's the whole thing. Real wealth is never about what people see. It's about what's been built, where no one's looking, the freedom to make decisions without financial fear, the security of knowing an emergency won't wreck you, compounding growth sitting quietly in accounts nobody else will ever see, while fake wealth is an expensive performance that gets more expensive every year to maintain. The leased car needs servicing, the wardrobe needs a refreshing, the image needs constant cash just to stay standing, and every dollar goes toward propping up the illusion instead of building anything real underneath it, which is exactly why the person performing wealth usually ends up poorer than when they started, running on a treadmill that speeds up the longer they stay on it. One mindset asks, "Will this impress people?" The other asks, "Does this actually move me toward freedom?" And one of those paths builds a fortress while the other quietly drains you dry. So look closer next time you see someone flexing hard. The base model badge, the money talk, the curated feed, the one-upping, the unsolicited advice, the designer item worth more than their savings. And then turn that same audit on yourself, because real wealth doesn't need an audience. It doesn't ask permission to be true. And the goal was never to look rich. It was always to actually be free.